Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Tillis Lederman, author of The Connector's Advantage, coach, trainer, and connection creator. And I'm excited for you to catch me on this week's episode of The Jessie T Show.
Michelle Tillis Lederman, welcome to The Jessie T Show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for being you and being on. I'm excited to talk about all that you've done and all that you've witnessed and journeyed through life and business. I think you have a great story and some great insights to share. So if you could just kick it off and tell us a little bit about you, your background, and who you are.
Well, I always say I'm a recovering CPA because it's just really we tend to make decisions based on like an anecdote to something that we had missing in our lives. And I had money missing in my life when I was growing up. And so I went down the finance path to find it. And I'm photographic for numbers, and I, kind of get that side of my brain. And so I just kind of said, oh, accounting, I'll just go do that. And I spent a decade in finance, and I was the only woman on a venture capital team, and I was the only woman on the trading floor, and I was a miserable woman.
Believe it.
I had this vision to get to the corner office on Wall Street. I had a corner office, two windows looking out over the stock exchange.
Mm.
And it was like the gilded cage, because it's really hard to leave that level of success and that level of financial security to do something to find your passion. And it was actually while I was working on the trading floor, and my boss, who was the treasurer, became the CEO of Tokyo. And so he basically said, Michelle, go out to Japan and teach everybody how to deal with me. Go hire a coach, have them go with you. And I was like, all right. So I paid somebody a ridiculous amount of money to come out with me for a week. I might have been making 10% of that.
Wow.
We go out there. I did everything she did and then some. And I was like, I'm good at this. I'm like, this is what I should be doing. So at the end of this long week, and if you really want to hear the story.
Yeah. Talk about it.
So, I'm 4'10". And I get to Japan, and I don't know if you've ever been there, but the culture in Japan is that you bow to the person higher in the hierarchy.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't realize and didn't know that. And they decided to haze me a little bit, the people that knew this rule. And so they said, if somebody bows, bow deeper. Well,
wow.
I was higher on the hierarchy. And so literally I had somebody on his knees on the floor trying to bow below me because I kept bowing deeper and they were trying to get lower.
Yeah.
And then, like this 6'3" Italian guy's over in the corner cracking up. And I'm like, oh,
Gotcha.
So that's how it started. And then basically it was a very global crew. And they came in with these huge decks, 50 pages to present to the new CEO. And I said, you get 5 pages max.
Wow. Wow.
So people kind of left a little upset, but I helped them figure out what the 5 pages should be. And we worked with them. And that's kind of what I do, is really help synthesize their message and understand what they want to communicate. But they were all like shell shocked, because I said, listen, you're coming in here and you're going to give projections of your numbers. And I'm here to tell you, don't underestimate your numbers, because if you do and you exceed those numbers, we're going to want to know why you didn't know that you could do that.
Wow.
And so that your bonus is tied to how closely you come to your numbers, not whether you exceed them or not.
How about that? So no sandbagging.
Yeah. So so basically I put the fear of their new CEO into them and had them really have to not just dial it in. So we go through the week, we do the whole offsite. It's great. They're like, oh, we survived. Let's get Michelle drunk.
Celebrate the victorious week. Yeah.
Now, remember, Michelle's 4'10", not hard to get her drunk.
So we're talking like a shot and you're good.
Doesn't take much. They had me out all night at the clubs in Japan, drinking. And I'm like, I have a 6 a.m. meeting with the CEO. I got to go back. I get back at 5:15. I shower, I dress,
Wow.
and I go to my meeting at 6 a.m. So I get back at 5:15. I shower, I dress, I go to my meeting with the CEO. Now, mind you, I'm still a little bit tipsy. Didn't have time for breakfast. And so I'm feeling great. Everybody had a successful meeting. Everybody was not scared of me anymore. So I go to the CEO. I said, I can do this. And he said, okay, you still have to do all the other stuff. I said, okay. And that's how this started.
Wow. Just being ready and prepared for the opportunity when it came.
Also, knowing and believing in yourself and having the confidence to ask for what you want.
Very cool. Yeah, that's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people are they either feel undeserving or don't feel like they have the voice to be able to speak up. But that's usually what carries so far in situations like that is the confidence, is the belief in yourself. Because if you believe in yourself, other people will too. And that's kind of where the belief starts.
I always say you have to believe you first. Otherwise, you're not going to convince anybody else of anything.
I mean, that's sales 101 too. Like I remember being in sales for years and when I believed in something, like you could feel it across the other side of the earth. But like when I didn't believe in something and it was like I didn't want to do it, it's like you knew right away. I was like, why are you even talking about this? I'm like, yeah. It was just I had to be lit up. There's this thing called human design, and I'm a manifesting generator, and I have to be lit up about things to get really like excited about them. And it's one of those things where I have to constantly always like try new projects, try new things. But I know that about myself, so I kind of figured out how to work that into my life. But it's if you're not lit up about something, if you're not excited about it, people will feel that. Not only will they hear what you're saying or not what you're saying, but also they'll feel the lack of like energy, the lack of belief, you know?
There's two concepts in my book that you just made me think of. One concept is authenticity, and the other concept is energy.
Yep.
So, one of the things I'm often getting when I'm doing talks is how are you supposed to be authentic when you don't buy into what's going on? Right. Like you just said, I'm not really excited. I don't really believe that they're making a good decision, but yet I've got to get my team to do it.
Yep.
And so that's one of the things I talk about is how can you find the productive energy? How can you find the authentic way to onboard people? And I usually say it is through that honesty. It's through building trust. It's through saying, "Hey, I wasn't totally on board at the beginning and I'm still working my way towards it. But here's how I am doing it." And share your own evolution in that process.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. Like explore that. Go a little bit deeper. Expand on in terms of in cultures, in corporate cultures, a lot of times you will find people that are either disenchanted or they're just not excited about what they're doing. They kind of it's one of those time to make the donuts kind of feeling. They have to wake up. They have to do it. Like how do you help change mindsets? Because I know that's part of even in your book, just seven
Yep.
mindsets within the connectors advantage. We'll talk a bunch about that. But how do you actually spur lasting change in mindsets that's not just motivation, but it's either discipline or it's habit. It's something they're going to perpetuate down the line.
So one of the things I always say, if somebody tells me they're not happy at work, I say, don't blame the company. Look at yourself. Happiness is an intrinsic emotion. It is not an external force. You have the ability to choose how to frame and have the perspective that you want. So we were talking before about energy and you said, well, if I don't really feel it, I can't show it. But there's an idea about being able to shift your energy, to frame your energy, to find the good in a situation. Like I have a bunch of techniques that I can give you. I have so many different roads I want to go down and talk to you about. Um, but you know, this isn't about the company's not doing this or the company's not doing that. Really, it's you're not finding what you need. There's a Gallup survey that on engagement, and there's only 12 questions in it. And my favorite question of the 12 is, do you have a best friend at work?
That's important. Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's not, I mean, a key part of our engagement with the job is the work that we're producing and the feeling of impact and recognition and appreciation and the understanding attitude of the boss. And all of that is critical. But there is statistics that show that you are going to be 50% more productive if you have a best friend at work,
I
if you have
believe it.
close work relationships. It actually predicts your happiness on the job, those relationships.
Wow.
People don't work for companies, they work for people.
Yes.
And they don't quit companies, they quit people. So if you want to be happier at work on the relationships that you have at work. Understand what you need to get out of something. So you kind of said, "Oh, I need to like have different things," and so I built that in. I totally get you. like I did my intro and I'm like, I'm a this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, because I get bored easily too. There's a
Yep.
certain type of brain and thinker, right brain, cerebral brains get bored really easily. And they need the unpredictability and the change of pace, doing something a little different every day to keep things interesting. Like you've got that in, you might be doing a podcast, but you get to have a different conversation every day. And
Every
so
time.
really keeps you on your toes. Sometimes I'm coaching, sometimes I'm doing a keynote in front of thousands, sometimes I'm doing a training in front of a few. Sometimes I'm just, talking to people, and sometimes I'm being, mom. Like, you canceled the pod well, you didn't cancel the podcast. You postponed the podcast this afternoon, and I was like, "Oh, honey, I could pick you up from school." And I texted him, and
Beautiful.
I ran and picked him up from school, and he was very happy.
How cool is that? Yeah, being able to shift on a dime and pivot and also do the things that matter. I mean, work matters and your calling and how you leave a mark on the world. But at the end of the day, it's family, it's time spent with loved ones, it's doing the things that you love to do. And those are the things that light most people up. And the trick is being able to figure out a lifestyle that can afford those things and being able to put yourself in a position where you can do those things, but also make an impact in the world. So you got really lit up and you talked about, oh, I want to go down all these different roads, talk about all these different things. And it was also in the vein of techniques that people can use in that mindset shifting, that paradigm shifting place. What are some of those techniques that came to mind when you want people to be able to change their mindset about something, especially in the workplace?
Okay. So, I alluded to one called "Find the Good." So a lot of times when we're in a situation where we're like, I don't want to be here, whether it's like, oh, I had to go to this conference and I don't really want to be here, or I have to attend this work thing and I don't really want to. So everything that we do can kind of be thought of as one of four categories: get to, want to, should do, have to. Say that again: get to, want to, should do, have to.
Yep.
Now, the get tos and the want tos are really easy. Get tos is like, I'm pumped, as you said. I'm so excited. The want tos are a little harder, but we have that intrinsic internal motivation, right?
Yep.
So I want to pass that exam. I want to run that marathon, right? It's hard, but I have the drive. I want to
Yep.
lose 5 pounds. The quarantine 15, whatever, you
Yeah.
know?
It's a real thing.
Oh God, yes. So that's want to, and so we can find the energy and we can find the right mindset to frame what we're doing. It's the should do's and the have to's that are a little harder. So my feeling is, if you think you should, you probably shouldn't, because a should is usually somebody else's want to for you.
Yep. Like an email. Email is a nice way for people to get you to do what they want. That's how I
It's
look at it. I'm not a big fan of email. I know I don't check it first thing in the morning and I don't check it at night. I check it through the day. I batch it and done. It's like one of those things where it's somebody generally is asking something of you, which is fine, but it's one of those things where it's like it's a to do. It's like a task.
Yes, I probably am a little too ruled by my email, but uh, my kids even catch me saying should. My husband will say, "Ah, you said should." Because if you hear the words coming out of your mouth, there's a mindset that's attached with it. So it's about reframing. It's about finding the good in the situation. So if you don't want to go to that event, you can say I don't want to, I should, or I have to. If you have to, then the only option is to reframe and to find productive energy.
Yep.
If you should and you don't have to, well, then your option is don't do it, right? Or reframe it. And if you can find, like, oh, I get to go to this and have free alcohol, or or
Yeah.
I want to go to this because I'm really interested in hearing this person's talk. So even though I might not like the whole thing, there's one thing I can focus on to bring some productive energy.
Look forward to something. Yeah. And kind of reframe your mindset on instead of have to, you kind of like, I've heard this before recently in just social media land. Like, I get to do XYZ versus I have to. Even just saying those things help shift your mindset.
You do have to watch your words. And so here's another technique: is to think about your language being neutral, positive, or actionable.
Okay.
And if you watch your words, a lot of our words have a connotation that is not neutral, and it will tend towards the negative. It'll tend towards a judgment. It'll, kind of, we'll feel something in our bodies that is not productive energy. And remind me, I want to get back to some of the energy concepts.
Sure.
So if you just look for a neutral word, you're at least being a little more even. If you are thinking about a positive word, then you are helping to shift your own brain chemistry to feel that positivity. But my favorite personally is actionable. Like, if you're going to a store and you say, I want to return this, and they say, I can't, it ends the action.
Yep.
It's final. But if they say, although I can't return it, here's what I can do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And we focus on the action and what we can do, it has a whole different perspective of how I feel about going to that store ever again.
Makes you feel good. They're trying to help you. When people just shut you down in life and in business, it's like you don't want to pursue that anymore, especially like in a transactional setting. Like, let's say it's a grocery store. That's a perfect way to put it. Like, I don't know, depending on where you are, I think you're up in the northeast, north-ish. I don't know if Publix is
Jersey,
up.
baby.
Yeah, yeah, Jersey, baby. I'm a Boston boy, so that used to be south for me, but now I'm in the real south down in Georgia. So Publix is really big down here. Do you have a Publix up there? Do you know what that is?
I know what a Publix is because my grandmother lived in Boca.
So Publix is really great at customer service. Everything is my pleasure. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. How can I like make your day better kind of feel? And it's like, it really does make a difference when you have a poor customer service experience on the other side. Like if you go to another, store and they're like, I can't help you, or they give you that attitude, that energy that we're going to talk about, like that kind of like dismissive or lack of trying energy, like that matters. People want to go where they're respected, where they're liked, where they're, received well. And that carries so much weight. And everything, if you think about it, every conversation, whether it's business, personal, whether it's transactional, like it all matters in how you show up in those moments. And people really have a responsibility to themselves and their fellow humans to show up well in those moments.
Okay, I love that. You made me think of a story. So I have a little challenge for all your listeners out there.
Bring it.
And it is like when we're in those moments, like at the grocery store, when the clerk is going really slow, or the person in front of you is like bagging and not it, right. And you're just feeling tense because it's just so slow. I want you to make a game out of trying to make somebody else smile.
It's beautiful.
And it's like kind of a little challenge I do for myself is because I can choose to be annoyed. And this goes back to, I'm not happy with my work. It's a choice. Like where can you find the choice to be happy? And so I can be annoyed and I could be like rolling my eyes and passive aggressive and
Yeah.
like pushing stuff down or, or I could be kind and I could help bag for them. Or I'll never forget this one time I was online at the grocery store and the person was so slow, the checkout person, such an attitude. It was like, you know, and I was just like, ugh. And so I get to the front of the line and I say to her, I'm like, how long till you're off? And she's like, an hour. I'm like, you're almost there.
Hell yeah.
And I just kept trying to like make her feel understood and um, just trying to start going a little faster, you know?
I mean, you're making people feel better, and at the end of the day, that's a great way to a great core tenet of living life is leaving people better than you found them. And you don't have to leave people per se, but just even in those micro interactions where you may never see this person again, just try to put a smile on someone's face. And for me, I went through a little bit. We talk about energy. I'm big into energy and consciousness and all these different things. And I went through an energetic low a couple of weeks ago, dealing with some relationship stuff, personal and business wise. And I found myself really pouring into people. Like there's this thing, it says, whatever you want more of, put more of it into the world. Right. And so for me, I was feeling like I was lacking love, lacking, a few things. And so I just started loving on people more, giving people compliments, like helping out where I could, just showing up and trying to give love where I could, which is pretty much everywhere. You can give in a very like filio brother sister type way, not like you have to, So I was doing that, and it started coming back to me. Like it started filling my cup, even though my cup was close to empty. I was filling up my own cup by filling up. It's like being a bucket filler, if you've heard that term before, filling up someone else's bucket.
I'm actually taking notes. I love that. Whatever I want more of,
Put it into the world.
put it in the world.
You want more love, give more love. And you want more happiness, and happy, like you said, there's two: happy and pleasure. Happy is internal, innate. It's fulfilling. Pleasure a lot of times can be like seeking and like it's fleeting. And so I think that when you focus on what you want more of, if it's a profound love, happiness, peacefulness, you put those things into the universe, they absolutely do come back.
I really, really love that. And I immediately said to my head, I'm like, oh, I need to have more patience.
Don't pray for it though. I hear that's a bad thing. I hear if you pray for more patience, you get tested more. So
I'm like, every year when we say, like, a lot of times my family and I will say, well, what are we working on in the next year?
that's
Like, what is
beautiful.
our focus? And year after year after year, it's always patience with me. And I seem to not be doing it. So
This could be the way to do it. Deploy more patience, and then maybe you'll feel more patient.
I
So
do like that. And you referenced energy, and I promised I would come back to it. So one of the things when I talk about energy, it was actually the first chapter I wrote in my first book. was the idea of energy because nobody really understood it. And energy is contagious, as we've been saying.
Yes.
And my dad had this saying when I was a kid. He literally would put me in front of the mirror and he'd say, "Smile." And I'd smile, and then he'd say, "Scowl." And I would, and he said, "What you put out to the world is what you get back," just like what you just said. He called the world as a mirror. And
That's beautiful.
it's something that stuck with me always. And so I really feel that way about energy. And we have a couple typical energy responses to people, right? So sometimes we add fuel to the fire. And that sounds dangerous, but it could be amazing, right? Because that's that champion, that cheerleader, that's that supporter that's saying, "You got this, you
Yep.
can do it." And adding fuel to somebody's fire could be awesome. It also could cause an explosion of mass proportions if it's like when you're angry or upset and they're adding fuel to that fire.
Yep.
So, kind of being aware of when that works and when it doesn't. The brush off, um, that always makes somebody feel dismissed,
Mhm.
right? So you never
Unheard.
want to minimize, and
Yep.
that sounds like, "Oh, you're overreacting. Oh, it's not that bad," right? We're minimizing how somebody feels. They don't feel heard. They don't feel validated, right? And so it becomes a very unproductive energy response to somebody. The extract yourself energy response, where you're like, "You know what? My energy is probably not the right energy for this moment. So I'm going to extract myself from the situation." And that's actually a really good temporary response, right? Like that moment when you're like, "Okay, going to blow. I'm going to leave instead."
Yeah. Create some space. Yeah.
Give yourself time to get to a place of response versus react.
Yep.
Um, and then the one that I think we should all be targeting most of the time is to meet somebody where they are.
Yes.
And I usually say just under or just over, because it depends on if they're low, right? If they're low, you want to meet just over where they are.
Yep.
Just give them a little bit more so they feel heard, they feel understood, they feel validated, but you can help shift them along with you.
Yeah. You don't want to be in a 10 when someone's in a 1. You'll freak them out.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Hi," I'm going to get hit, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And if somebody's at like, "Hi," and you're like, I
Hmm.
actually did this. I'll never forget my first job after business school. I'm telling you all my secrets. You said you like stories, so here
Listen,
you
people
go.
tell me everything. Go for it. I want to hear it all.
I went to Africa after I graduated from business school. It was the trip of my lifetime. It was my dream come true. Always wanted to see the Serengeti monkeys. Like I was there for 5 weeks living in a tent. I
Wow.
I just didn't want to come
Beautiful.
home. So when I came home, I was kind of like I didn't want to be there. I was depressed. I just, New York was just not Africa.
Right. It is a
And
jungle, but not the one that you want. Yeah.
yeah, it's a very different jungle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to start my first job in a consulting firm, and everybody was so excited on the first day. And she's like, "How are you so excited?" And I looked at him like, "Really? Yeah, no, I don't really want to be here. I still wish I was in Africa." Like I was so bleh.
Yeah.
And this woman, her name was Princess. Yes, that was her real name.
Great name.
She just looked at me, turned around, and walked away.
I had no time for it. It's just gone.
So she was like, "I'm going to extract myself." It
Yeah.
was like, the right response because we were just in totally different places. We were not going to be able to meet each other where we were. But that's kind of where you think about what's productive energy for a situation. Productive energy does not mean perky energy. You don't
Right.
have to be upbeat all the time. Sometimes a calm energy, sometimes a listening energy.
Very grounded energy too. Like a lot of times, especially in a emotional state or in a turmoil driven environment, like that grounded, present, very kind of confident, you know, just very baseline. It doesn't, like you can kind of bring down the uh the tension.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I circled back to all those little
Yeah,
paths.
I was making sure you got it all. So with what you're the energy is super important. I'm glad we touched that because energy isn't everything, and we actually can manifest and dictate energy in a ton of different ways. Even if you think about moving energy through your body with a workout. I mean, there's a lot of times people have an anxious feeling, or maybe they're overexcited about something, but you get in, you get a workout done, you're physically changing your state. And there's this guy, I forget his name. He's Joseph McClendon, I think it is. He's a speaker, and he talks about shaking that ass. And basically anytime you need to change your state, like just get up and dance a little bit and shake that ass. And you can literally go from like one state to another within just, 2 minutes of moving your body. So I think that people that work within energy and maybe they don't understand it, something as easy as just getting the body moving can completely change where they were. And especially if you get after like a hard workout and you're sweating. And some of my best business ideas have come from, it's a almost a place of meditation for me, especially if I'm doing something like running or jump rope where it's kind of easy to do and I don't have to think about it. And I've done it so many times that like it's just very autopilot. Like my mind transcends into a different space because like the lower mind is just kind of doing its thing over here, and all of a sudden I can start. Some of my best business ideas, period, have come from those moments.
I jump rope is not that easy for me. So,
It takes
but
some getting used to, but it's good.
there's a saying that there is no emotion without motion.
Yep. Or motion creates emotion, right?
Yes.
We have a lot of similar. I don't know if you've learned from like Zig Ziglar or there's a lot of like core principles that you're talking about, like motion creates emotion, and you don't want to be on a 10 when someone's on a 1. Like these are things that I heard through my years of like sales. So there must be some influences that we've both gotten through the years of our career that are very similar. Like I feel like there's a lot of similar sayings that we're talking about.
We just say them a little differently,
Yeah,
but you know what? It's whatever resonates and whatever sticks in your mind.
that's right. That's right. So talk to me a little bit about the books on the wall. I know that they're all yours. They're all authored by you.
These are all authored by me.
Hell
The
yeah.
two bottom ones are really my core
Let's talk
content.
about
So
it.
the 11 laws of likability, we've been talking about some of those laws. We've talked about the law of authenticity. We talked about the law of energy. Um, that is actually the foundation for my latest book, which is The Connector's Advantage. And this is the 7 mindsets to grow your influence and impact. And what I realized is that relationships are the core of everything.
No
And
question.
that's why when you said introduce yourself, I said connection creator, because that's what I want to do. I want to be a catalyst for other people to connect and
Yes.
to understand how connections form and how to be a connector, because the book's called The Connector's Advantage, and that advantage is simply faster, easier, better.
Love it.
Whatever it is you're working on, you're going to get there faster, easier, and better through your connections.
No question.
Because, say that again.
No question. No,
Yeah.
I 100% agreement and alignment with that.
And so there's one thing about, this first book, the publishers made me put the word networking in the title. And I'm like, ah. So I call it
Mm,
relationship networking, because I don't want, I don't like the word networking. It has the word work in it, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. I want you to think about it as connecting, as building long-term relationships with a long-term vision. And it really is a way of being, right? So my brother-in-law walks into my office as I was finishing up the latest book, and he said, "Oh, another book on networking." I'm like, "No, no, no, this one's about connecting." He's like, "Well, what's the difference?" And I looked at him, and this came out of my mouth. Networking is something you do. A connector is who you are.
Yep.
And that became the last line of the book, because I was like,
Beautiful.
like
Beautiful.
it was the moment where I understood even what I was trying to communicate to people is, I don't want you to do something. I want you to be someone. And I want you to embody these mindsets. And I'll give you the 7 and you can pick 1 or 2 that we can talk about. I want you to embody the mindsets in everything that you do, because that's what a connector does, is they prioritize relationships in every aspect of their life,
Yeah.
personal, professional, everything.
No question.
The relationship come first. So these mindsets are these are the order of the book, but they are not linear.
Okay.
So connectors are open and accepting. They have a clear vision. They trust. They believe in abundance. They are social and curious. They're conscientious, and they have a generous spirit. I
Sounds
always
like
have
a
to
great
count
human
them to make
being.
sure I get them all.
Yeah. That sounds like just the makings of a great human being.
But it's not easy.
No, it's simple, not easy, right? Like it's a simple concept, but putting it into practice consistently in all interactions and relationships is not probably not going to be easy for most people. Yeah.
So which ones do you want me to take a
I'm
diver deep
excited to
on?
talk about most, if not all of them, but I'm interested in the 11 laws of likability. Can we run through those 11 really quickly and talk
Okay.
about those? Because I feel like it's very important as a connector to be likable. Like you don't have to suck up to people. You don't have to, be something you're not, but like people want to be around people they like, they know, they trust, they believe in, and like likability is huge. And so what are the 11 laws? And then if we could bleed back into the connector's advantage.
Likability is huge, but I want to let everybody know you cannot make anybody like you.
True. And you shouldn't try to do that.
We are all likable. What we need to do is enable others to see what's likable about us.
Love it.
And that's kind of what when I wrote the book, I put it in three sections: what to do before, during, and after a conversation. So before the conversation is the law of authenticity, right? Connecting with who yourself, the real you is the best you. The law of self-image, perception, and energy.
Okay.
That's all pre-conversation. You have to like you first, right? Obviously, we know perception is reality, but we want to be able to drive how others see us. So we need to have that clarity.
Yep.
And then the law of energy we've been talking about. The middle of the book is the conversation. And so the conversation is four laws. And we talk first about the law of curiosity. I always say when you don't know where to start with a question
Yeah. That's
that
great.
you actually want to know the answer to. And a question that you're willing to share a little bit about yourself as well, because I think of it as a little bit of a dance. So after the law of curiosity, you go into the law of listening, because you can't ask if you can't hear, and make somebody feel heard.
Yes.
Then we go into the law of similarity, because people like them. Now that's one of the ways, and I'll veer off the path a moment, because one of the things I realized is that's actually a detriment to being a connector, is that people like them, because end up having a narrow
Echo
scope.
chamber. Yeah.
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 So the law of first impressions, the law of association, all of that stuff is in the other laws that we've talked about. And then the final law there is the law of mood memory, because people will remember more how you make them feel than anything that you say.
Yes.
And then we have the after the conversation. How do we move from conversation to connection? And that's where we talk about the law of familiarity, because, I trust the things that are familiar to me. The law of giving, which originally had a different name that I'll tell you about. And then finally, you'll laugh at this, the law of patience.
Practice what you preach, sister. Yeah.
And it's the last chapter, because I'm like, it's the hardest one for me. And I think for
Right.
other people is you have to give it time to let the relationship grow. You have to give it time to
Nurture it.
see your results. You have to give it time to be able to add the value that you're trying to add. So yes, so those are the 11
I
laws.
love them. And I think it's important to illustrate those, because it does bleed into being a great connector. Like all those 11 laws of likability, with the before, the during, and the after. It sets the foundation to go out and actually be a great connector. So let's jump back to that. Let's talk about being a great connector, and go through the seven again, and I'll pick out a couple like you mentioned.
Okay. And I actually summarize the concepts of the 11 laws in the Connector's Advantage, because they're
Yep.
so foundational, and those concepts will bleed in to enable you to take it up to that next
Love it.
level. Let's go. Open and accepting, have a clear vision, abundance, trust, social and curious, conscientious, and generous spirit.
Ooh. The second one.
Have a clear vision.
Yes, I think that's going to be important for people to know where they're going, where they want to go, and how they want to get there. So let's talk about that a little bit.
It is an important one, especially because when I say the advantage is faster, easier, better results, if you don't know what results you're looking for, you're not going to get them.
Shoot for nothing. You're going to hit it 100% of the time.
Yeah. So I feel that, and that's why I put it earlier in the book, because one of the things I teach, especially with generous spirit, is to always say, what are you working on? How can I help you? What's your focus right now in a conversation? I also teach that you have to be ready to answer that question.
Yep.
And so that's part of having a clear vision. And it's really about knowing what you're working on and being willing to ask for it. And I talk about different ways to ask that doesn't put a relationship at risk.
That's a great concept. Expand on that a little bit.
So a lot of times people won't ask. Right. I told you the other story about, I told the CEO I can do this. I asked for what I wanted, because, we're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of feeling pushy. We're afraid that they won't think we're ready, or maybe we're not really ready. We have all these messages and this internal voice in our head that is keeping us from asking for what we want.
Yep. A lot of noise.
Right. So I have another technique called be your own best friend, but you'll just have to go Google that one. It's in the books. Um, but the idea is that when you ask in a way that doesn't put the relationship at risk, it lessens the fear of asking.
Yep.
So I give a few different types. Like my favorite is the opt-out ask. And the opt-out ask basically gives the person the excuse of how to say no. Because if you ask and they want to or have to say no, they're now uncomfortable.
Yep.
They want to avoid you. That puts relationship at risk. But if you make it as easy for them to say yes as it is for them to say no, and vice versa, then they're not uncomfortable and you leave your door open for a yes down the road.
Nice.
Accept and appreciate the no today because it might get you a yes later.
Can you give us an example of what that sounds like?
Absolutely. So, for example, I after a program, I'm doing a talk, and somebody says, "Oh, I loved it," and I said, "If your company allows it, I would really appreciate a recommendation on LinkedIn." If your company allows it, is the opt out.
Yep.
I gave them an excuse, an easy way to say, "Oh, we're not supposed to do that." Totally understand, no problem. Really appreciate hearing from you, right?
Yeah.
Or I can say, if you have the time, could you post a review on Amazon? I'm trying to get, more honest reviews. If you have the time, is an opt out.
Nice.
So we have the make it easy ask, the shrinking convenient um, alternative asks. We have the whiff it ask, right? What's in it for them?
Yeah.
Lead with benefit, which is a risky one if there is not really a benefit.
Right. Yeah.
I
You got to make
hate
sure there's a benefit.
I hate those emails that I get on LinkedIn, and I get them all the time. I think you would benefit from connecting with me.
Yeah. Why? What's the why? Like what, how, what you get knowing your market, knowing your person you're talking to, right? Like if you're an author, maybe, if they're a podcast host, you'd benefit with me by potentially being a guest on the show. Let's see if it's a good fit. Like having something that they could just throw out there that may relate to your world.
I would rather you just say, you know what, I've been following your work and
Yeah.
would like to connect because I like what you're doing. You're going to get a connection versus it would benefit you,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That you're assuming that what you are offering is what someone wants, and it could be way off base.
which is why it's a really powerful one, but it's one you want to be sure actually lands.
Yes. Yeah. Because you could be off the mark, and then it just gets awkward.
Yes. And the one I've been adopting a lot lately, and I think this is probably the easiest one for people to adopt, is what I call the non ask.
Okay.
So, for example, it is not telling you what I want you to do, but it's telling you what I'm working on. So, right before I said, "Hey, I'm launching a new book club," right? And so I might say to you, "Hey, my goal right now is to get this book club launched with, X number of people, or to make a big splash on our July 1 launch date, or something like that." And then shut up.
Yep.
Because when you shut up and you say something that you're excited about and you have energy about and you're working on, and that's contagious, that other person's taking that energy and saying, "How can I help?"
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's a great concept. Again, it goes back to, people for the most part, if they're into what you're talking about and they're into the relationship, they're going to want to find a way to help out. And so that old sales technique of which matters to this day is a lot of times, like when you, like you said, just stop talking and wait for them to respond, and then from the response you go from there.
And, people like to feel like they're adding value. It feels really good. And so when we talk about generous spirit, which I like to talk about in kind of context, because when we think have a clear vision, it's all about us and all about ask. And it's not, because I always want you to lead with value and see how you can support somebody else,
Yes.
but don't forget yourself in the process.
Right.
And so, great, there's something they can do for you, but always look at what you can do for them as well without expectation of something in return. Giving is not linear, right?
And it's not a one for one. Like you have Ivan Meisner's name as the foreword for your book, and he was, famous for BNI, Business Network International. I was at BNI for years. I've started groups and all this different stuff. And at the time I was a banker, and if I was aligned with, like, let's say an estate planning attorney, that estate planning attorney could potentially give me a lot more referrals through the year as someone who could help clients open up checking accounts or credit cards. Like there's just more opportunities there where I may have a handful of clients that need a will or need a trust throughout the course of the year. So relationships don't have to be one for one. But going into that and saying this, like I've said this before in referral partnerships, I'm like, listen, I may be able to refer to you 10 times to year one, but that's okay with me, like that, because that makes sense in this relationship. And there's other ways we can add value to each other outside of just referrals. So it's just setting the example, the expectation up front, I think, is one of the biggest things you can do in that situation.
And it's just, doing it because you want to do it. But recognize that when you feel good, when you're adding value, when you allow somebody to help you, you allow them to feel good. So don't be
Yes.
afraid to receive as well.
I got a
And
story about that real quick. So, when I was younger, I grew up scarcity mindset, not a lot of money, and I went on that path of learning the wisdom of wealth and became a wealth manager. And so, like, that's similar to what you did. And part of my scarcity mindset was whenever somebody tried to give me something, even a gift, like a Christmas gift, birthday gift, whatever it was, I would feel weird receiving the gift. This was up until, I'm 39 now in the airing of this podcast. And it was one of those things where it took me up until like a few years ago to really understand that premise, where it wasn't, yes, it was nice to get the gift, but it was more so about the person who was giving the gift. And it was about not stealing their joy because I was awkward about getting gifts. And so that actually was something I had to work on personally, because I did grow up with that scarcity mindset. And I felt like people were giving me a handout if they were trying to help me. And I had to reframe that whole thing. And thankfully I did, but it really took most of my life to get there.
I have a similar experience, and it was with the word, saying thank you. I felt like when somebody complimented me, I had to discredit and discount the compliment.
Yep.
That was being humble.
Yes.
And I remember my ex-boyfriend's mom just saying, "You need to learn how to just say thank you."
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize that and now I'm lucky I learned it before I started doing stages and people come up to a speaker and they say it was so great, so great. And I've learned to just smile and say, thank
Yeah.
you so much, and take it in
Yes.
and appreciate it. Um,
Well, you think about it this way too. Like, if you have a gift, right? We all have our own gifts, and people are like thanking you for sharing that gift, or they're applauding you for showing up a way and making them feel a certain way. Like, you don't need to dim your light. Like, you don't need to turn down your volume of greatness or love or whatever it is. Like, you need to really step into that and know that that's a gift that you have, that it's really kind of a calling for you to share that with people, and people are going to be thankful for that.
and right now, when I say thank you, I really mean it, and I can make somebody feel that they gave me a gift by saying that they
Beautiful.
appreciated it, they like the talk. It is a gift to me, and I am thanking them for the gift of their words to let me know that what I'm doing has an impact,
Yes, that's
which
huge.
is, any listener that's listening to the Jesse T show right now who wants to connect with me, all my contact information is going to be at the bottom. And to say that you heard me and something that I said resonated, that is a gift. And that is a generous spirit to take the time and to take the energy to tell somebody else they had impact. Try to do that every day
Yep. Yeah.
because it's a gift.
Makes them feel good, and leaving people better than you found them, going back to that whole concept. What was number 5 out of the 7
Uh,
mindsets?
Social and curious or conscientious?
Uh,
Social and curious isn't that interesting one. But wait, I wanted to close down one idea.
yeah.
So we were just wrapping up the non-ask and
Yes.
we just said,
Yes.
just shut up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you shut up and then it's that awkward silence and you feel really uncomfortable.
Get comfortable in it.
So first, count to at least 7 or 10. Like, it's not as long as it feels.
Yeah.
And then if there's still nothing, you might just add, any ideas or any advice for me? Or
You're kind of putting the ball in their court, making them respond. Yeah.
plant a little seed and just say, I respect this or this about you. You're always so creative. Put a compliment out there as to why you think they might be able to give some advice, because people again feel like, oh, you think I'm smart, I can add value. And you wouldn't be asking them for their advice if you didn't think that. This is not blowing smoke up somebody's backside. This is real, and you're giving them that information.
Yep. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to button that up. Okay. So out of the other 6 remaining, what do you feel most called to share in this moment and talk about?
Well, we talked about generous spirit and we talked about clear vision. The other 2 that are kind of coming to my head are, well, 3. Oh God, they're all coming to my
They're
head.
all there. That's why
So
there's
open and
7 of
accepting.
them.
You referenced abundance, but and then conscientious, because it's one that people don't always get what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah. You want to talk about
So you pick
conscientious? Yeah. Conscientious.
conscientious.
Yeah.
So this is not a common one that's out there. People have heard about open accepting, not my way, but that's okay. Um,
Not yet, but they will.
but the conscientiousness is really about connectors follow up and they follow through, right? They
Yes.
they do what they say they're going to do. This is a way that a connector thinks. They don't promise it if they're not going to fulfill it. That said, because they have this desire to have a generous spirit, they can sometimes overextend themselves.
Yep.
So the mindset of conscientiousness is to understand your boundaries, to understand what you're willing to say yes to and what you are wanting to say no to, and more importantly, how to say yes and how to say no. Just as we talked about how to ask, the book and the book club is very tactical because I don't want you to just be in theory. I want you to know how to implement these mindsets, and I call them mindset missions throughout the book,
Love it.
so that you can then take this idea of yes and no are not one word answers. No but is my favorite thing. No but,
Yeah.
because you have to get comfortable saying no. I literally had a sticky note, the 3 by 5 little sticky squares on the corner of my monitor with my husband's handwriting with the word NO for a year
Yeah.
because I needed to learn how to say no because I wanted to say yes to everything. And so what I did was I created a criteria because I get asked to do a lot of pro bono talks. And I love doing pro bono talks. I did one for a breast cancer group. Like, if they mean something to me, especially, there wasn't any other work I was going to get out of it, but I still wanted to say yes. And so I had a criteria. It has to be within like a 45-minute drive of my house. I'm not traveling pro bono. You have to have like at least 100 people in the audience or things like that. Like there was a criteria that I could ask questions. And so I could say no, but if you get another organization to come in with you and you can get something closer to where I live, or no, but then come back to me. So I gave them a way to get a yes down the road. So the no, but is so powerful. No, I can't help you, but I can refer you to someone. No, I'm not available that date, but I know a few people, let me connect you. And it's just so much easier to say no, but.
Yeah. Yeah. And the art of saying no is something that most very successful entrepreneurs and people in general, they've mastered. Protect their time, protect their interest. Like if it doesn't align with the vision or the mission, like and it takes skill. There's an art to it. There's a soft science to it. You don't want to just say no, fuck off. Like you want to be, professional if you can. But at the end of the day, there is an art to it. And I've seen a lot of amazing people in different walks of life really master that art. And speaking about the art of just kind of what you've done and put together all the 11 laws of likability and the 7 mindsets and the connector's advantage, specifically for the connector's advantage, even though, in the concept and the mind frame of like what we're talking about business, connecting business, plugging in and relationships, but you can use a lot of these techniques in like personal relationships. There's so many, because it's just relationships, right? And it's the end of the day, a relationship, regardless if it's with someone in a business or someone outside of it, it's just a relationship. And there's so many things that we just talked about that would be great, like dating and marriage tips, like how to listen and how to show up and how to be grateful and how to be conscious and like all these different things. I mean, if someone's listening to this or watching this and you want to add a little spice to your personal life as well, I would definitely say this would be a double whammy. You can hit the business side and the personal side as well.
And I actually do incorporate both views. And you and I are so aligned because I don't actually differentiate either. Some of my best relationships are those where the lines are pretty blurred.
Yeah.
My best friend, who lives like a stone's throw, like literally around the corner, she has been my client. She has worked for me. She's been my client again. She has worked for me. And sometimes she calls and I'm like, are we doing business or are we just talking about like,
Yeah.
you know, um, we're going to, we've gone on trips together, but yet we've also worked together. So um, you never know. And if you're enjoying the relationship, build the relationship. Don't worry about the result.
Yes.
If you've got a clear vision, you'll find your way to your result because of these mindsets.
Love it. Yeah, and I'm very similar with my client. I call it my client family because when I bring someone into my wealth management practice, I really enjoy them as a human being. And obviously there's, will we make money together and will we, do this together and grow together? Yes. But like at the end of the day, I want to be in business and do business with people that I like. And that turns into friendships. That turns into, a guys retreat we held in January. And two of the people that were there were my wealth management clients, and like the other were friends that I knew. And so I think that you start playing in this place, and there are times you want to protect and make sure that you kind of have an arm's distance. But for the most part, the way that I operate 9 times out of 10 is a lot of my clients become friends and they become people that I do life with, which is just a beautiful way, I think, to do business in life. And so thinking about the future and thinking about 2021, what do you have going on within your world and your businesses and just being an author? Like, what do you have going on this year that you're excited about?
Well, I am really excited about the book club. I partnered, people have been asking me to do like micro courses and online courses, and I'm like, ah. Um, um, and so I actually partnered with High Tide, who has been amazing. They have helped develop the curriculum. So it's actually like a micro course. We're calling it a book club, but the truth is, you're going to get daily lessons, 15-minute lessons every day in your app with
Wow.
actionable things. We create a community with discussion boards, and I do a live Q&A for the book club each month. So I'm so excited. I'm literally, as I said, I'm going to be recording videos that are part of the book club as soon as we get off, because I have makeup on today, and I don't do that every day.
Got to take advantage. Yeah.
Got to take advantage of the fact that I'm dressed at least from the waist up.
Right.
Um,
Very cool.
so I'm really excited. We're launching July 1st. There's a link below. And the coolest thing is, if you have a community that you want to grow and build, like for example, maybe you want to be a host for your wealth management clients, you can host a book club. And depending on the number of people, right, boundaries, I will do a private Q&A for just your club,
That's beautiful.
and I'm on the discussion boards answering questions and things like that. And then you have a private space on the platform to have your own discussion group and things like that. So it's really cool. And although it's kind of like the pampered chef, like as a host, you can make money. I always say you also can just donate that money to a charity. And I've got a few that I would recommend, just saying.
There you go. Beautiful. Well, listen, we had an amazing conversation. I definitely smell a number two coming down the road in terms of a second episode and another part, because there were so many things that we could have talked about that I'm interested in having a conversation on. But let me be the first listener and viewer to say thank you so much for being you. Thank you for the work that you're putting and the light that you're shining in the world. And I look forward to our next chat. She's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Michelle Tillis Lederman. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T Show.